license. Towards Marakopa.
On the 8th of September 2025, the abduction of the Phillips tamariki by their father Tom came to a sudden and violent end.
Overspiked. It's gone off the road. Shots fired!
Our officer has been struck in the head. He's immediately fallen to the ground and taken cover. Soon after, a second patrol unit arrived and has engaged the offender, and he has died at the scene.
For nearly 4 years, the Phillips children had been held by their fugitive father. 1,369 long days, cut off from their mother, their whānau, and the world.
Those people that are helping him or know where he is, we want them to sit down with us and work out how we can get those children out safely.
For years, police said Tom Phillips was receiving help.
We have another investigation that will help put the puzzle together that tells us more about the last 4 years, and in particular anybody who may have been helping Mr. Phillips, and we will deal with them accordingly.
We think it's absolutely important that we continue to look for those people that have been supporting Tom Phillips and hold them accountable.
But 8 months after the children were found, police announced they were ending their investigation. No charges, no explanations, no justice. Do you think enough's been done?
Considering nobody has been held accountable, I think not.
For the first time since her tamariki were found, Cat Christey speaks out.
People think that this started 4 years ago when Thomas abducted the children the first time. This started long before that.
We examined the police response to one of Aotearoa's most extraordinary missing children cases.
There are many unanswered questions. There was a pretty adverse outcome at the end of all of this, and I think people deserve answers. I think Kat deserves answers as much as other people.
Kia ora, Minister. We try and get those answers from police.
You're talking in there about being tough on crime, yet no one's been held accountable for assisting the fugitive Tom Phillips. Are you disappointed with that?
So that's an ongoing investigation by police.
It's actually wound up?
Well, that's an operational matter.
And we try to understand what happens when some of the most important decisions made about children are kept hidden from public scrutiny.
At this point in time, I think Aotearoa New Zealand has the most stringent family court secrecy rules, as far as I know, in the developed world.
A public inquiry has examined how government agencies responded to the abduction of the Phillips children. But one question remains unanswered. When their mother repeatedly raised concerns about their safety, why did no one act? And why does she still feel today that her whānau is being let down?
Ka whakatewhatewha hia e mata. When Tom Phillips' Hilux was found parked below the tide line at Kiritehere Beach in September 2021, Cat Christey, the mother of Tom's 3 children, feared the worst but held on to hope.
You cannot break the bond between me and my babies. It doesn't matter how hard he tried, our bond was strong.
Weeks later, her tamariki returned.
The news just in, the father and his 3 children, missing for almost 3 weeks, have been found.
But what should have been the end of the ordeal was only just the beginning.
Tom Phillips and his children haven't been seen for 34 days, the second time in 4 months they have disappeared.
After the first abduction, Phillips retained custody of their tamariki. Months later, he vanished with them for a second time. It would be nearly 4 years before Kat saw her children again.
What have the last 8 months been like for you?
Full on. Very busy, hectic, a lot.
What's going on?
I have a lot to deal with, a lot of work for the sake of my children, a lot of meetings with many different agencies across the board, Oranga Tamariki, Ministry of Education, police, family court, just to name a few. But it's constant. It's never ending.
It sounds like a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot to navigate.
A champion wool handler, Kat's had to give up her farm job to manage a never-ending stream of meetings, appointments, travel and paperwork. Every day she deals with the same agencies she believes failed her tamariki, agencies that still hold enormous power over her whānau's future.
There is an expectation that I be perfect. I am far from perfect. I have never claimed to be perfect. I'm just a person. I'm just a normal person who is just trying to survive, to live, just to make it. And it's hard, it is really hard sometimes. And I would like to see anybody else endure what I have endured for all these years.
What do you mean?
People think that this started 4 years ago when Thomas abducted the children the first time. This started long before that. This started before Thomas even started court proceedings against me. This has been going on for a long, long time.
By the time of the first disappearance, Tom and Kat had been separated for around 3 years after she ended their 8-year relationship.
What kind of a dad and husband was he?
He was a good provider, but very controlling. It was a very imbalanced relationship. His views on what a marriage should be were different to my own. We should have been a team, but there was no room for compromise. It was his way or the highway. And he liked to be in control.
How did he control you?
He would control all the finances, take vehicle keys away from me, not give me fuel if I needed fuel, and he would control who I saw and when I saw them. I was never allowed to go to work. He didn't like me working. He wanted me at home with the children, just being a housewife. He wouldn't let me put the children into daycare, which is actually really important for children before they start school, to learn to socialise. But he didn't like that I could then have freedom to go to work, to hang out with my friends or my family. He didn't like that.
Did you become isolated?
I was very isolated.
Was he violent?
He wasn't extremely violent. It was just, a few slaps here and there, nothing major. He strangled me once, which is, in the grand scheme of things, what I've endured from a previous relationship. Oh. So physical violence doesn't worry me as such. It's the psychological abuse that has the most profound effect on any person.
Had you ever been violent towards the children?
Not towards the children, no.
Tom's coercive control was wearing Kat down, and there was another side to his behaviour that was becoming impossible to ignore. You said he had a fascination with guns.
Oh, yeah. Which, there's nothing wrong with liking guns. There are some cool guns out there, and they are useful for hunting, for providing for the family. I have a healthy respect for guns and gun safety, especially when there are children involved. It's not something that should be taken lightly.
Were you worried about the guns around your house?
Oh, always, yeah. He had a very lax attitude about them.
What do you mean?
He had them located in areas that to me were unsafe and unnecessary, and he couldn't explain it. He wouldn't tell me why. One he had located under one of the kids' cots, one under the couch, one under our bed, and these are just the ones I found. How many others were there around, because he had a lot of guns. And I didn't know about all of them. He would buy guns without informing me, but, his whole attitude was, a woman is there to serve her husband. That's what he said.
As their relationship broke down, the tension over the firearms came to a head.
And it just got to a point where he was still so lax with his guns that I just had enough. I tried to ring the police and report that. I tried to take photos of his guns around the place. He barged me out of the way. He took my phone off me. He'd hung up my phone. Police rang back. He then hung up the phone again, and he told me to get off his property. I truly believed police would show up because it was a 111 call and it was 2 hang-ups, but police did not come. Police did not follow up. 2 weeks after that incident, Thomas rang me and begged me to go back to him again, and I said no. I said nothing has changed. I'm not coming back. And he told me that I would regret it. And he hung up and he started court proceedings that day or the next day, immediately.
The details of the custody dispute between Kat and Tom remain hidden inside the family court. For now, what we can say is that after their separation, Tom was awarded full custody of the tamariki. Later, he was granted approval by the Ministry of Education to homeschool them.
I knew it was the start of Thomas isolating and controlling the children. His house was a cave from the school, and he chose to pull them out of public schooling and to homeschool them. Nobody consulted with me about that. So the Ministry of Education allowed that to happen without consultation with me, without my permission. My concerns were he was isolating them and he was controlling them. And I knew this because that's what he'd already done to me.
Did anyone listen?
Nobody listened.
Ministry of Education has confirmed to Mata that it didn't consult with Kat, explaining it wasn't legally required to, because Phillips had full custody of the tamariki. We also now know that after the first abduction in September 2021, Phillips retained full custody even after police charged him over the disappearance.
I would like New Zealand to know that when he left in December 2021 with his 3 children, he did have legal day-to-day care of those 3 children.
Why do you think Tom took your tamariki bush?
To teach me a lesson. Because who am I? How dare I leave? Who do I think I am? I'm nobody and I mean nothing. And he was making sure that I knew it. That's my Achilles heel, is my children, and he knew that. He knew that's where I would hurt the most. Everything else I didn't care about. It's irrelevant. But my children, they're my world. They're my everything. And he just wanted to hit me where it hurt.
We used to say that the most dangerous time for women was in the 6 months after they left a partner. It's actually more like 2 or 3 years. It turns out that it has a much longer tail than we want to talk about.
Auckland University Associate Law Professor Carrie Leonetti says this case highlights a much bigger problem about how we assess the risk to women and children.
I think we have to sort of get out of this old stranger danger mindset and recognize that women and children are at more risk in their homes than they are out on the street, and those risks go up dramatically in parental separation. When parents separate, children are at a higher risk to be abducted. They're at a higher risk to be abused. They're at a higher risk to be killed. And so we need to treat parental separation as an urgent moment of sort of risk screening and risk assessment for children of those people who have separated. And if they don't have children, for the woman who's trying to leave a man.
Just 2 months after the first abduction, Tom disappeared with the children for a second time. It was several days before Kat learned they'd been taken. She contacted police immediately, but this time there would be no search. There were no television stories the second time that Tom went missing because there was nothing to film. No search parties, no press conferences, nothing. In an article from The Time, police say Tom hadn't violated any court restrictions, that he was allowed to go bush, and that, quote, he's doing nothing wrong. Just why there appeared to be a lack of urgency from police is one of the key questions in this case. Leonetti believes the answers may in fact lie with the family court.
Hypothetically, if there was a family court judgment finding that Tom Phillips was a perfectly safe father and outdoors were good for the kids, of course that's going to affect the police response, as opposed to if there's a family court judgment saying he's really at high risk to abduct these kids and that would be a serious emergency.
What do you make of the police response?
I guess I'm really hesitant to second guess the police when they're not allowed to answer most of the questions I think that people have about it. I think I do share what I think is the perception of a lot of Kiwis that it didn't, 3.5 years, it didn't seem to take on the urgency that if my kid were abducted, I would hope the police would have in getting them back.
The Attorney General Judith Collins has announced an inquiry into the Tom Phillips case.
While the public inquiry has investigated the actions of police and other government agencies, its terms of reference excluded the decisions of the family court.
I do not know how you can talk about appropriate systemic responses to family violence if you are not going to talk about the institution that probably has the greatest impact in terms of our responses to victims. It is well documented that in private custody proceedings, family court judges, lawyers, psychologists don't see a relationship between intimate partner violence, let alone non-physical intimate partner violence like coercive control, and the risk to the health and well-being of children. There is this deeply entrenched ideology. It's children need fathers, and especially boys need fathers. This is an undercurrent to a lot of the decision-making in the court, that no matter how violent a father is, no matter how much risk he poses to the kids, they're better off with him without them. There's a fundamental vilifying of single mothers. And I think until we crack open the lid of this secret court and start talking about what is driving the decision-making that is leading to these I mean, again, I'm not talking specifically about Phillips, but just generally to these incredibly poor outcomes for the safety of women and children, we'll never get at this. We will never have a meaningful response to family violence in this country. We just won't.
Even after Kat's tamariki were found, government agencies acting on the directions of the family court continued to treat her as an outsider.
Firstly, I would like also to offer our condolences to the Phillips whānau and their loss, and acknowledge the brave deeds of our police. The family court are actively managing this case, and we will comply with the directions they give us. I want to assure the community here in Waikato, and also the wider public of New Zealand, that my team in this region have been planning and preparing for the return of these tamariki from when they went missing. I can confirm that the children were settled last night. They are doing well under the circumstances and engaging with the staff supporting them.
Tēnā kora e he pātai taku mau, Warwick. You said that Oranga Tamariki has had a plan in place and you expected this to happen. Is that a plan that you've put together without the mother?
Look, 4 years we've been able to plan this. I can't go into specific detail as to who was involved in the plan, because it's certainly prior to my time in the role, but there is a plan and we'll carry that out.
We've spent the morning with the mum and she's had no contact with her children.
Yep.
I think every mother in New Zealand will be asking, when is this mother going to see her kids?
So look, understand that we are bound by some conditions of the family court. So we were taking directions from them around that. We will work through this though.
This is an extraordinary situation. This is an extraordinary situation. Surely you can arrange some kind of contact with supervision for a mother who hasn't seen her kids for nearly 4 years.
Yeah. Look, we won't get into comments about this.
The older sisters are adults and they don't have anything in the family court. Can they see their siblings?
I'm not prepared to go there at the moment. I'll offer no comment.
While the family court has been shielded from public scrutiny, Kat has faced it at every turn. Just weeks before the children were found, she was charged with drink driving, which later hit the headlines. But she says the rumours spread about her have been far more damaging.
There was a narrative started right back before the children were taken the first time that I'm a drug abuser, which I have proved multiple times through drug testing that actually that is not true. And yet they continue to waste money on drug testing, even though I've passed multiple drug tests, both voluntary and court-ordered.
Are you required to do drug tests?
Yes, they made me do another one since the children came back, and alcohol because I got done for DIC, so I must have a drinking problem. But I passed that too.
How do you feel about that?
Not to excuse my behaviour or my actions, but there is a bigger picture. That's my first DIC. Considering my children had been abducted nearly 4 years earlier, I had kept myself together pretty well. And this was just one major slip-up. I didn't even shirk my responsibility of showing up at my court date the day Thomas was shot, even though I'd only found out after I was in transit to court.
You carried on and went to court anyway?
Yes, I made a massive mistake there and I suffered the consequences and I am paying the price.
Kat accepted responsibility for her actions. The question is whether the people who helped Phillips keep the tamariki hidden would face the consequences for theirs.
Police believe they have now proof that fugitive Tom Phillips had outside help during his 4 years on the run. They've uncovered a second campsite about 200 metres from the one where the remaining children were found. Among the items are whiskey-based RTDs, iced coffee bottles, a gas bottle and a camping stove, as well as tarpaulins. Plenty of clues as police hone in on who could have been helping the fugitive father.
But just 8 months after the tamariki were found, police announced they were concluding Operation Cranmere without laying any charges, saying the evidential threshold for a prosecution had not been met. Former Detective Tim McKinnell says there are still questions to answer.
What investigative tools would usually be used by police in terms of trying to identify those who may have helped or those who may have supplied some of these bits and pieces around the campsite?
Just looking at it, while it's a bit of a mess, I think you could probably reasonably say it's an evidence-rich environment. There's a lot of material there, so you can start with the basics like fingerprints, DNA, but I suspect items that have been purchased, they would be able to be traced. Is there CCTV footage? Are there bank records that can help trace where some of that material's come from? Potentially witnesses that you could speak to that sold items that are there. There are probably local people who will recognise some of this stuff as well, so there's plenty to work with.
Given what you say about the environment, it's evidence-rich, have police just not put enough resource into the operation?
It's difficult to know looking from the outside without knowing everything that they have and haven't done and what restrictions they had around budgets and resourcing and those sorts of things. But there certainly looks to be plenty of material to work with.
Police have said they haven't met the evidential requirements for a successful prosecution. What does that mean?
Well, in the police view, they've conducted their inquiries, they've completed all the reasonable inquiries, and they're not convinced that they've got enough evidence for a person or people to be convicted. That's the position they're taking. It'll be interesting to see whether they've exhausted all reasonable lines of inquiry before forming that view.
Leonetti says the decision not to prosecute raises a broader question about how evidential thresholds are interpreted in cases of family violence.
One of the things I have seen often across cases involving things like family violence and abducting your own children, by the way, at least in my definition, is family violence. So cases involving family violence, cases involving things like sexual abuse, sexual violence, all those kinds of interpersonal crimes that are often committed by people other people know, is that they have a really artificially high threshold for what is sufficient evidence to bring the charges.
And what's the concern there?
I think in New Zealand generally, we actually need more review of that decision making. Prosecutors generally have sort of unbridled discretion, certainly to not bring charges. And I'm a little worried it's too unbridled, that discretion. I'm a little worried we don't have serious enough guidance about what is and isn't proof beyond a reasonable doubt, what is and isn't in the public interest to charge, and how those decisions are being made.
Kat learnt of the decision to conclude Operation Cranmere through the media. Her concern now is for the safety of her whānau.
Are you worried there might be a risk posed to yourself and your tamariki now, given no one's been held accountable?
It is a concern because there are many people that aided Thomas in different ways, and my concern is that they will try to keep from being found out. The concern is, what lengths are they willing to go to? Where are my children safe? Is there anywhere? The fact that police have yet again failed in their responsibilities doesn't give me much hope that they will be able to provide my children with the security that they need.
Do you think enough's being done?
Considering nobody has been held accountable, I think not. I think they've been very lax. So 2 operations there, Operation Curly and Operation Cranmere have both been epic fails. 4.5 years, and they want to do a documentary about it.
The Netflix documentary only came to light after Tom Phillips was shot and its crew was given access to the crime scene. It emerged that police had been working with a production company on a commercial documentary about the case, one they would have editorial control over.
Documents seen by Mata show the project had the backing of police's most senior leaders, including Police Commissioner Richard Chambers, who played a role in securing its approval, police signing a contract to work exclusively with the production company.
But one person who didn't support it was Kat.
I never gave my permission for this. In fact, I was dead set against it when they first told me.
When were you first told about the documentary?
March 2025.
And what was your reaction?
It wasn't pretty. It was very blunt. And I said they do not have my permission. I said I couldn't believe that they wanted to waste time and resources on something like that when they hadn't even located my children. All of a sudden, they're going out there to do things so that they've got footage for this documentary, not because they were following up on leads or anything. I mean, look how lax they were when they received video footage of Thomas with the 3 children in a paddock, and they waited 15 hours before they put feet on the ground. At that point in time, that's when they should have been using their time and resources, right there, when they've got hard evidence that Thomas was 100% in the area. 15 hours. And yet they want to jump on an opportunity for footage, for a documentary that they have final say over. It just paints a pretty little picture of the police priorities, and my children were not it.
When you told Andrew Saunders, the detective in charge, that you didn't support the documentary, what was his response?
He told me they didn't need my permission, that they were just letting me know.
The Phillips family also objected to the documentary. Documents obtained by Mata reveal police agreed to participate in the Netflix production without consulting oranga tamariki, independent child welfare experts, child psychologists or victim advocates. Police say only the producers and police staff were consulted.
I'm really disturbed by the embedding of an international documentary crew on a case like this, particularly without what appears to be the consent of those that are most affected by it, those that are most likely to suffer trauma from the events. They had no say in whether or not this documentary should exist, and I'm really uncomfortable with the way the police have appeared to have used this case for self-promotion, because that's what it looks like.
Have you heard of something similar to this in an ongoing investigation?
Not in this country. There is undoubtedly a place for police to communicate what they do to the public and to the community, and I think that is part of their role, to communicate what they do and how they do it. What concerns me in this case is that you have people that haven't had the opportunity to consent and are at the centre of the case, and they are now being a major part of an international documentary project. I think that's outrageous.
How is this different to something like Police 10-7?
Well, in some ways it's similar, because the police have complete and utter editorial control. I've seen wording in some of the material that's been publicly released that the documentary crew could not report or screen anything that called into question the credibility or integrity of the police. So a project like this isn't really about scrutiny, it's about telling a particular version in a way that a very powerful institution is comfortable with.
Kat believes the decision to push ahead with the documentary despite her opposition is just another example of how police have disregarded her and her adult daughters. Do you think you've been given the support that a victim of a crime should receive?
I had reached out to victim support. They had not made contact with me when Thomas was shot and when the children first come out from the bush. And I'd reached out to them in the hopes that they might be able to assist with some sessions with my psychologist. And they told me that they couldn't, that I'm not a victim, that there's nothing that they can do. The top person in victim support then reached out to police for a referral in a bid to access funding for us to get therapy. And police refused to do a referral, stating that we're not victims of a crime, that they weren't going to charge Tom with domestic violence because it wasn't domestic violence, and that there was nothing else that they could do for us.
Associate Professor Carrie Leonetti strongly rejects that interpretation.
This abduction, I think, was an act of child abuse, but it was also an act of domestic violence against these children's mother. Taking children and saying you will not see them for 3 years, they will live or die, depending on what I decide, is also an act of domestic violence. And yeah, it's incredibly concerning to me that she's not being treated as a domestic violence victim because her children were abducted by her former partner.
McKinnell believes both legally and morally, Kat should be receiving the duty of care afforded to victims. What is the concern for her not receiving support?
What message do the police and other agencies want to send to the public about how they treat victims? We don't have a tiered system of worthy and unworthy victims. You're a victim or you're not, and you should be looked after. The police minister's been very clear. The Minister of Justice has been very clear. We need to do better for victims in this country. Here's a perfect opportunity to look after a victim.
We've made multiple requests to police for an interview about the police's handling of this case. All were declined. Mata also contacted the office of Police Minister Mark Mitchell, but never received a reply. So I came to Scrutiny Week to put my questions directly to him. Kia ora, Minister. On Operation Cranmere, you're talking in there about being tough on crime, yet no one's been held accountable for assisting the fugitive Tom Phillips. Are you disappointed with that?
So that's an ongoing investigation by police.
It's actually wound up?
Well, that's an operational matter, and I'm sure that there's still more work going on behind the scenes with police. It was such a complicated case and a tragic case, as we all saw, but that is a matter for police to speak to.
It's actually been wound up, and police failed to actually contact the mum. When they wound it up, she found out again through the media. Given that there are potential criminals walking around in the community now, does that pose a risk, and what are police doing to protect her?
I'm sure that police would have had the best interests of every family member and every party involved in that, because obviously the tragic circumstances surrounding it. But that is operational, that is something for police to speak to.
Well, even if it was just the one time that they forgot to contact her, when Phillips was shot and a child was found, they also took 2 hours to contact her, and she found out through the media. They contacted a Netflix documentary in the first few minutes. Yeah,
again, that is for police to speak to, but generally speaking, police go out of their way to look after all victims, all parties. Obviously, these situations are fast-moving and unfolding, but generally speaking, police are very good at making sure that all parties are kept informed and providing support to them. On
that Netflix documentary, when police informed her that they were going to do one, and she said she didn't want her or her children having anything to do with it, they told her it didn't matter because she didn't have a say in it. Is that fair?
Look, I'm not going to make comments on statements that other people have made. All that I'd say is that I'd recognise, obviously, the mother of any children is, the emotions are going to be high. And my expectation is that police, like always, are thoughtful and careful around dealing with anyone associated with that type of incident.
Would you be disappointed to know that the police declined her referral to victim support, effectively blocking any free access to counselling?
Well, again, I'd have to go back and get some information on that.
Is she a victim?
I don't have it. But,
do you think she's a victim?
Well, me personally, I think that any right-minded person would say that a mother, regardless of the circumstances, when they're separated from their children and they've lived through the tragedy that we all saw unfold in front of the country, a lot of people would probably consider her as much a victim in terms of as what has happened. But I cannot talk to the police response other than saying, in my experience, police are very, very good at making sure they identify, communicate and support as much as they can victims. But these cases also can be very complex, and there can be a lot of complexity sitting behind them that's not always immediately available.
It is a yes or a no, though. Do you know, is this woman a victim, and the older sisters, given that they've been a victim of Tom Phillips, who took the children away from her for 3.5 years, and should she get free counselling?
I believe for a mother to have her children taken by Tom Phillips into the bush and her being deprived of access to those children at that time, then yes, that is a very tough thing for any parent or any mother to go through. But in a lot of these cases, sometimes there's a level of complexity sitting behind that as well. And actually, the focus should always be on the well-being of those children. And I actually think that all of us as a country combined, all we wanted to see was the well-being of those kids, and that they were actually looked after, they had the support wrapped around them, and that we look after them in the future after what they've been through. Yeah, thank you guys.
Following the minister's comments, we contacted police again to clarify the status of Operation Cranmere. They confirmed it is no longer being actively investigated, but remains open. While the wait for accountability continues, Kat draws strength from her adult children. You have two older daughters, Storm and Jubilee. What has their support meant to you?
I can't even put it into words. I don't know where I'd be without them. They are like my rocks. They're like my pillars of strength. They lift me up when I feel down, when I start to fail. They are there in their epic Storm and Jubilee way. And their support means the world to me.
They organise searches for their siblings. They set up a Facebook page to raise awareness. They even fundraise money for a reward. How did they get on?
So Storm and Jubilee set up a Give a Little page in the hopes to raise anything. Their goal was $10,000, which in this day and age is next to nothing. But it was something, and it was an effort. And it was really disappointing to see the public response to that, because they didn't even raise $5,000, and that in itself speaks volumes about how little New Zealand cared about my children.
What's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is that they're out there wondering why we haven't come to get them.
Is that why you've decided to speak?
Also just that it's been so long and there's nothing else we can really do.
After Tom Phillips was killed, Storm and Jubilee offered to donate the money they'd raised to the police officer who was injured in the confrontation. Police declined.
I would like to thank him for his sacrifice, for what he did. He put his life on the line in a bid to bring my children home And without him, we wouldn't be where we are today. He was in the right place at the right time, and he didn't hesitate. Our small contribution, while little, was all we had to give him, besides our thanks, our many, many thanks for what he did in the line of duty.
In March, Mata applied for access to the family court's decisions in this case. We're awaiting the court's ruling. Meanwhile, Kat continues to navigate the very systems we're trying to scrutinise.
I'm just an average person. I haven't been provided with the tools necessary to navigate any of the systems that me and my family find ourselves in through no fault of our own. I truly feel that it is intentional, that they are deliberately heaping so much pressure on me in the hope that I will give up and walk away. But they've underestimated me. I'm not going anywhere.
What do you want the world to know about your whānau?
They are resilient. They are strong. I don't know, what do I want the world to know about my children? I want them to know that they're stuck. They're stuck in a system that's not there to help them at all. They're stuck in a system that's trying to justify their inactions. They're stuck in a system that's trying to prove that they were right in failing my children in the first instance.
One day they're going to grow up and they're going to wonder who did what to try and help them. And I think it is absolutely on us to find out exactly what was done and exactly what could have been done better.
The public inquiry into the Phillips case delivered its findings and recommendations to the Governor-General in July. Leonetti is disappointed the family court wasn't included in the inquiry and says change across the system is vital.
I research and write and teach a lot about secondary trauma and things like institutional betrayal. And one of the things you will see throughout victimology research over and over again in all kinds of contexts is victims will say, what the perpetrator did to me was bad, but what the system did to me was worse. I actually would have been able to get over what the perpetrator did to me until the system did to me what it did. And that, because the perpetrator harmed me, but the system took away my faith in the country I live in the civil society, in my family, in my friends, in my whānau, in my community. Like, it was the betrayal by the people who should have caught me after this horrible thing was done to me that actually has done me the most lasting harm.
Even now, opinions about Tom Phillips remain deeply divided. Despite all that's happened, some still see him as a hero. Others believe it's time for Kat and her whānau to move on. For Kat, it's not that simple.
We don't get to move on. This is lifelong trauma. This is generational harm. This is our life from here on out. And this is something that we have to live with every day. Thomas doesn't have to. He took the easy out. He was a coward. He couldn't face the music. He never cared about the children. If he cared about the children, he would have laid down his arms. But he didn't. He attracted that gunfire. He made that situation happen. That's all on him. Now my children have to pick up the pieces and they have to feel their way through the rest of their life.
What does the best case scenario look like for you and them?
That we're together. That my children can just be. That they can navigate life on their own terms. not under orders from OT or the family court, that they can just be, that they can heal as much as is possible after what they've endured.
Significant elements of this case remain secret, hidden behind suppression orders. The public may never come to know the full story of what happened. Tūturu nei he raru ki tai, aha ko tērā, he toka tūmoana tonu a cat.
My children being taken away from me is only making me stronger, and it makes me want to take back my power for the sake of not only my children, but all the other children out there that may be going through the same thing.
Raru ki uta, raru ki tai, me manawa titi, me manawa kairoke. Piri ki te uma, o tāne mahuta, me matatua, me manawa roa. Wai, wai, kai kapua, wai, wai, kai pakiaka, takahi ato ara e hoki ki te kainga. E toru, toru, rima, rima, e taura here, tangata te wete. E toru, toru, rima, rima, he pahara keke, te wehe. Te rarawa, kai whare, tūtonu, tūtonu, aumi e, hui e, taiki e.
Ko te reo, te take.